Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Malcolm, and I am 29 years old, living in a two-bedroom condo in Dallas that I've spent most of my 20s working to afford. For the last 8 months, my girlfriend Jasmine had been living there with me. We had been together for 2 years. On paper, things looked good. Steady job for me, big dreams for her, a clean place in a decent building with a gym and a view over the highway lights at night. From the outside, we looked like a couple that was on track for engagement and wedding plans and joint holiday visits. On the inside, it was not nearly that simple. Jasmine and I met at a friend's cookout in Arlington. She was laughing with a group of people around the grill, arguing about whether macaroni and cheese counted as a side or a main dish. I remember watching the way she used her hands when she talked, animated and bright, and how easily she slipped from joking to listening when someone else spoke. She was working part-time at a boutique and trying to build an online clothing business. I was already deep into my career, working long shifts and overtime because that was what felt safe to me. Hours traded for security. We started talking over plates of food and kept talking long after the party ended. The first year was easy. We went on long drives to Fort Worth, walked around malls we could not really afford to buy anything from, and spent quiet nights in my old apartment watching movies. She said she loved how calm I was. I liked how she brought energy into rooms that felt empty before. When my lease ended and I closed on the condo in Dallas, she helped me pick out furniture. She would sit on showroom couches and declare, "This one looks like people actually sit on it." And I would laugh and follow her from aisle to aisle, glad to have someone there. 8 months ago, Jasmine moved in with me. It was supposed to be temporary while she saved money to launch her business properly. She worked part-time, and I covered the rent, utilities, and most of the groceries. It did not feel unfair at first. I made more money, and I cared about her. I told myself that if we were building a future together, helping her now would come back around later. I also had an old Honda Civic that I was not using much since I bought a newer car. Her own car had died, and she could not afford a replacement, so I told her she could use the Honda while she got on her feet. Over time, the list of things I covered grew longer. Her car insurance went on my policy. Her phone plan moved onto mine. Little streaming services and subscriptions logged into my accounts. When she could not make the minimum payment on a credit card bill 1 month, I paid $1,200 to clear it, so she would not be buried in interest. She said, "I will pay you back when my business takes off," and kissed me like that promise itself was far more than any receipt. I believed that we were a team, and teams helped each other. 6 months ago, Jasmine's older sister Latoya moved back to Dallas from Phoenix with her 3 children. The children were 3, 5, and 7 years old. I met them for the first time in my living room on a Saturday afternoon. The 7-year-old, Micah, did not look me in the eye, just made a beeline for my entertainment center. The 5-year-old, Maya, walked in carrying a marker and immediately started drawing circles on the side of one of my moving boxes. The 3-year-old, Zion, stood in the doorway and screamed at the top of his lungs for no discernible reason at all. "He just likes to vocalize," Latoya said, as though that explained everything, scrolling on her phone while Zion shrieked. She had her hair pulled into a messy bun and dark circles under her eyes, but her attention never left the screen. I am doing gentle parenting. No yelling, no hitting, no negativity. They have to feel free to express themselves. I looked at the blue marker line on my box and the crumbs spreading across my rug and tried to convince myself that I was being rigid, that kids were just messy and loud. The next time they came over, Micah grabbed my television remote and started swinging it around like a toy sword. I told him, "Hey, please put that down. It is not a toy." He made eye contact, laughed, and flung it toward the wall. The remote hit the screen dead center. The crack was instant and spidered out across half the display like ice breaking. The room went quiet for half a second, and then Zion screamed again as if nothing had changed. My stomach dropped as I stared at the damaged television that had cost me more than I wanted to admit. "Micah," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "that was not okay. You broke my television." Latoya glanced up from her phone as though she had been interrupted during something much more important. She sighed and said, "We do not shame him. Accidents happen." Micah shrugged, already reaching for another gadget on my coffee table. Jasmine gave me a small, tight smile that I recognized now as her "please do not make a scene" face. Later, when I got the quote for the repair and saw the $380 bill, I thought about sending it to LaToya. Instead, I swallowed it and wrote entertainment in my budget spreadsheet. The 5-year-old, Maya, had developed a habit of drawing on walls. No surface was safe: my hallway, the side of my kitchen island, even the door to the laundry room. Each time, LaToya would say things like, "She's exploring her creativity," and "I do not want to crush her spirit." I would stand in the store buying magic erasers and paint samples, wondering when exactly a creative phase turned into property damage. Meanwhile, Zion seemed to scream for the sheer joy of hearing himself. High-pitched, relentless shrieks that made my teeth hurt. No one ever told him to stop. The visits became more frequent. A quick drop-in on a Friday night, a Sunday afternoon playdate, an emergency on a Tuesday when LaToya had to run errands. My weekends, already precious to me after 50-hour work weeks at my job, began to feel less like rest and more like extended episodes of chaos. I started to dread the sound of a knock on my door. I would glance at the peephole and see small shapes bouncing behind LaToya, and my shoulders would tense up before I even turned the handle. One night, a Thursday, Jasmine and I were on the couch watching a show on my newly replaced television. The lights in the condo were low, my shoes were off, and for once the place was quiet. I had just started to feel my body relax into the cushions when Jasmine muted the sound and turned to look at me with an expression that was suddenly serious. "So," she said, folding her legs beneath her, "my sister needs you to watch the kids every Saturday and Sunday." I thought I had misheard her. "What?" I said. "What do you mean she needs me to watch them?" Jasmine spoke in the same calm tone people use when they are explaining something obvious. "LaToya and Reggie want to start going out on weekends again. They want to go clubbing, get their social life back. The kids cramp their style, and they trust you." I actually laughed because it was the only reaction that felt natural. I thought it had to be a joke. Jasmine did not laugh with me. "I am serious," Jasmine said, frowning slightly, like I was the one who had said something unreasonable. "You are off on weekends. You were just here, sitting around. You could help. It would mean a lot to my family." I stared at her, the laughter dying in my throat. "I'm sitting around in my own place because I work 50 hours a week and need time to recover," I said. "My weekends are how I stay sane. And those kids break things. Mike already cracked my television. I'm not signing up for that every weekend." Jasmine rolled her eyes and leaned forward. "It is only 2 days," she said. "Step up. Be a man. Help family." That phrase, "be a man," landed like a slap. I felt my jaw clench. "They are not my family," I said slowly. "You and I are not even engaged. Your sister's children are not my responsibility." Jasmine's face went cold, the warmth draining from her expression in an instant. "So that is how you see us," she said. "Not family." "That is not what I said," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "I said I'm not babysitting 3 children who destroy my belongings every weekend so your sister can go party. There is a difference between helping occasionally and becoming free childcare." Jasmine crossed her arms. "She needs this," she said. "She is a single mother who has been through a lot. She deserves to have fun sometimes." I nodded once. "She has a boyfriend," I said. "Reggie. He apparently also wants to go clubbing. Why can he not watch his girlfriend's children?" Jasmine shook her head, impatient. "He is not their father," she said. "He should not have to watch them every weekend." I stared at her. "But I should," I asked. "I'm not their father. I'm not their uncle. I'm the guy whose condo they have been tearing up." Jasmine stood up suddenly, planting her hands on her hips, and I could see the ultimatum forming in her eyes before she even spoke. "You need to decide what kind of man you want to be," she said. "The kind who steps up and helps, or the kind who is selfish and only cares about himself. If you cannot do this one thing for me, for my family, then maybe you need to think about whether you are ready for a real relationship." I stared up at her, feeling something inside me cool and harden. My mind began listing every sacrifice I had made without being asked to, The rent she did not pay, the car she drove, the bills I took on without complaint. I thought about the 8 months of her living in my condo rent-free, because she said she was saving for her business. I thought about my old Honda parked in her sister's driveway most days now, about the $1,200 I had wired to cover her credit card debt, about the groceries I bought, and the nights she stayed home working on designs while I cooked. I thought about all of that, and then I looked at the woman standing in my living room telling me that if I did not babysit her sister's children every weekend, I was not ready for a real relationship. Let me get this straight, I said finally. If I do not babysit your sister's children every single weekend, you are threatening to leave me? Jasmine lifted her chin. I'm not threatening anything, she said. I'm telling you to step up or get out. The words hung in the air between us. I felt something click into place. Then I am out, I said. Her mouth fell open. What? She asked, as though she had misheard me. You heard me, I said. I'm not doing it. And if that is your line in the sand, then we are done. She stared at me, eyes wide. You are seriously choosing to be alone over helping with the children for a few hours? She asked. I shook my head. I am choosing not to be volunteered for free babysitting every weekend for the foreseeable future, I said. There is a difference. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, but there was fury in her voice when she spoke again. You are going to regret this, she said, grabbing her phone. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. Start packing your things. You have until Sunday. I stood up and walked past her toward the bedroom. Behind me, I heard her scoff and start tapping furiously on her screen. As I closed and locked the door to my room, I heard her voice rising in the living room. She was already on the phone with someone, and I did not need to hear the words to know it was LaToya. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, while Jasmine's voice got louder and more hysterical through the wall. I felt oddly calm. It was as if a decision I had been avoiding for months had finally been made for me. The next morning, Friday, I was halfway through buttoning my shirt for work when a loud, insistent pounding rattled my front door. I checked the time and frowned. It was just after 7 in the morning. I walked down the hallway and opened the door. LaToya stood there with all 3 children clustered around her legs. Micah was bouncing a ball against the hallway wall. Maya had a crumpled piece of paper and a marker in her hand. Zion was chewing on the sleeve of his shirt and, already making small whimpering, sound like he was winding up to a scream. You need to watch them today, LaToya said without greeting. Reggie and I are going to look at apartments. I blinked at her, still waking up. No, I said. LaToya's eyes narrowed. What? She asked, as though the concept of refusal had never occurred to her. Your sister does not live here anymore, I said. Neither do your child care problems. I am not watching the children. LaToya shifted the diaper bag on her shoulder. She said you two had a fight. LaToya said. You will work it out. Just watch them for today. I moved to close the door. Not happening, I said. Goodbye. LaToya stuck her foot in the doorway, blocking it. My patience thinned. Are you serious right now? She demanded. What kind of person refuses to help family? I took a breath. The kind of person who does not allow his time and his home to be assigned to him, I said. I did not agree to this. Move your foot. At that moment, Micah tried to dart around my leg into the condo. I stepped sideways, blocking him with my body. Nope, I said. Not today. LaToya scooped Micah back and glared at me. You are unbelievable, she said. My sister deserves better than you. I felt a spark of anger. She had better, I said. Then she tried to turn me into a free weekend nanny. That is not happening here. Have a good day. I pushed the door until her foot finally moved, then closed and locked it. I could hear her shouting through the door for another minute, but I walked away. On my drive to work, my phone buzzed with a message from Jasmine. My sister said you turned her away. Jasmine had texted. You are being ridiculous. This is why we are having problems. I stared at the screen at a red light. We are not having problems, I replied. We are broken up. Get your things by Sunday, or I will pack them for you. There was no response. I put my phone in the console and drove the rest of the way in silence, my mind replaying the door scene again and again. By the time I pulled into the parking lot at my job, the decision to change my locks had settled into something solid in my chest. Saturday morning, I called a locksmith. By noon, there was a new deadbolt on my front door and a new sense of control in my chest. It cost $220, but the feeling of security was worth every cent. I also changed the garage code for my building and went down to the front desk. The lobby attendant, a man named Carl who had seen Jasmine and me come and go many times, looked surprised when I said, "If Jasmine comes by, please do not let her up without calling me first. She no longer lives here." Carl raised his eyebrows but nodded. "Understood," he said. The rest of Saturday, I spent packing. I pulled out Jasmine's clothes from the closet, folded them, and placed them in boxes. Her brightly colored dresses that she wore to brunch, the worn sweatpants she lounged in while watching shows, the blazer she had once called her boss lady jacket. I packed her toiletries from the bathroom, her makeup bag, the hair products lying along the shower ledge. I put her yoga mat, which had been lying untouched beside the television stand for months, into a box with decorative pillows she had insisted on buying even though they served no purpose but to be moved off the bed every night. As I packed, memories attached themselves to objects. The mug she bought at a street fair in Houston while we were visiting friends. The blanket we had argued about because I thought it was too expensive, and she said, "It is a statement piece." The notebook filled with sketches of clothing designs that she had shown me late one night, eyes shining with hope. I packed it all, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. By the time I was done, there were about 15 boxes stacked neatly near the front door, labeled with her name in thick marker. On Sunday at 10 in the morning, the building's front desk called up to let me know that Jasmine was downstairs with her mother Angela and LaToya. I took a breath and told them to send them up. I opened the door before they could knock. The hallway was suddenly crowded with emotion and perfume and tension. Jasmine's eyes were red, like she had been crying. LaToya's mouth was already set in a scowl. Angela looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and determination, as if she had practiced a speech. I stood in the doorway and pointed to the boxes stacked just inside. "Her things are here," I said. "You can take them." Angela stepped forward, ignoring the boxes. "Young man, you cannot just throw her out," she said. "You have been together for 2 years." I shook my head. "I did not throw her out," I replied. "She gave me an ultimatum. She told me to step up or get out. I chose to get out. Now, she has until the end of the day to collect her belongings." Jasmine shifted from foot to foot, looking at the boxes like they were pieces of her life she was not ready to claim. "Malcolm, can we please talk alone?" Jasmine asked, her voice shaky. "We could talk right here," I said. "There is nothing that needs to be hidden." LaToya snorted. "This is ridiculous," she said. "All she asked was for a little help with the children. You are acting like she tried to move a stranger in." I turned to LaToya. "She demanded that I babysit every single weekend, indefinitely," I said. "That is not a little help. That is unpaid labor." LaToya crossed her arms. "They are children," she said. "You are supposed to love them like family." "I'm not family," I said. "Your sister and I were dating." Past tense. Angela stepped in again. "You do not throw away 2 years over babysitting," she said. "People in real relationships help each other." I looked at her. "She threw it away when she turned helping into an ultimatum," I said. "I did not make that choice. I just believed her when she made it." Jasmine flinched. "You are not even going to listen to me?" she asked. "Listen to you about what?" I asked. "About how I am selfish for having boundaries. About how my weekends should no longer belong to me." "No, I think I understand your position just fine." LaToya stepped closer, getting my space. "You know what?" she said, jabbing a finger toward my chest. "You are pathetic. A real man would." I cut her off. "A real man would establish boundaries and not let people take advantage of him," I said. "You were about to say something else. Go ahead and finish." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, apparently unable to find a comeback. Angela shook her head. "We raise our children to help family," she said quietly. "If you ever loved my daughter, you would not be doing this." I took a breath, feeling the heat rising in my ears. "Look," I said, "I will make this simple. Everything of Jasmine's is packed. You can take it now. If anything is still here at 6 this evening, it goes to donation. You could be upset with me, but that is the reality." There was a long pause. Then LaToya muttered something under her breath and grabbed the first box. Jasmine and Angela followed, each of them carrying another. It took 3 trips down the hall and into the elevator. The whole time, Angela muttered about how I was making the biggest mistake of my life and how I would never find anyone as good as her daughter. On the last trip, Jasmine lingered at the door with an empty hand, looking at me as though there was still a play left in the game. I cannot believe you are doing this over something so stupid, she said. It was not stupid to you, I replied. You ended our relationship over it. You said step up or get out. I got out. I did not mean it, she whispered. You do not give someone an ultimatum unless you are prepared for them to choose the other option, I said. You were not. That is on you, not me. She opened her mouth and then closed it again. Finally, she turned and walked down the hall. After they left, I shut the door, turned the new deadbolt, and walked through every room in the condo. The bedroom felt bigger without her makeup spread across the dresser. The living room felt quieter without her throw blankets and scented candles. In the bathroom, I found one of her hair straighteners still plugged in beneath the sink. I unplugged it, put it in a small box by itself, and set it in the hallway with a note taped on top that said, "You forgot this." Then I went back inside, shut the door again, and stood in the silence. The rest of that day felt strange, not exactly sad but hollow, like I had just put down something heavy I had been carrying for a long time. I cooked myself dinner, washed the dishes, and sat on the couch with a new television playing quietly. For the first time in months, I did not feel like someone might burst through the door at any moment with loud children and demands disguised as emergencies. I slept more deeply that night than I had in a long time. The following Monday, things took a surreal turn. Around mid-morning, during a break at work, I checked my phone and saw a notification from Venmo. Latoya had sent me a payment request for $400. The note on it said, "Child care fees you would have paid." I stared at the screen, almost laughing. I hit decline and added my own note. That is not how any of this works. 10 minutes later, I received another request, this time for $600. The note read, "Emotional distress." I declined that one too and blocked her on the app. On Tuesday, Jasmine started calling. At first it was from her usual number. Then when I stopped answering, new numbers appeared. Unknown, local area code, another one. By the end of the day, I counted 23 missed calls. I answered the last one, more out of exhaustion than curiosity. "You need to stop ignoring me," Jasmine said immediately. "We need to talk about the car." I leaned back in my chair. "What about the car?" I asked, even though I already knew what she meant. The car was my old Honda Civic, the one I had let her use when hers died 8 months ago. The title, registration, and insurance were all in my name. She had been promising to save up and buy it from me for $3,500, which was already a deal. "I need it for work," Jasmine said. "I cannot just give it back." "Then you need to buy it," I said. "We agreed on $3,500. When you pay me, I will sign the title over to you." She huffed. "I do not have that kind of money," she said. "Then you do not have a car," I replied. "You cannot just take it," Jasmine protested. "I have been driving it for months." "Borrowing," I said. "You have been borrowing my car." "Borrowing ends when the relationship ends. Bring it back by Friday, or I will report it stolen." There was a stunned pause on the other end of the line. "Stolen?" she repeated. "It is not stolen. You let me use it." "I'll let my girlfriend use it," I said. "You are not my girlfriend anymore. I am revoking that permission. Friday at 5 in the afternoon. Bring the car back." She started to argue again, but I hung up. She called 14 more times. I did not answer. On Wednesday, a new number appeared on my work phone, not my cell. I answered automatically, thinking it was a client. "Is this Malcolm?" a deep voice asked. "Yes," I said. "Who is this?" "This is Leon," the man said. "Jasmine's father. We need to discuss your behavior." I closed my eyes briefly. "There is nothing to discuss," I said. "You owe my daughter an apology," Leon continued. "She told me what you did, and I hung up." A few minutes later, he called again. I sent it to voicemail. He left a long message about respect and manning up and how his daughter deserved better. I deleted it without listening all the way through. On Thursday afternoon, the front desk at my building called again. "Latoya is here," Carl said. "She is asking to come up." I felt a wave of irritation. "Do not let her up," I said. "She is not a resident and does not have permission to be in my home." Later, I heard from friends that she had caused a scene in the lobby, yelling about how I was keeping her from her sister and how I was revealing my true colors. She posted about it online, a long rant about how I had turned on their family. 3 different people sent me screenshots of the comments. Half of them agreed with her. The other half pointed out that I had the right to decide who entered my home. By Friday, the car deadline loomed. At 3 in the afternoon, Jasmine texted from yet another new number. "I cannot bring the car today," she wrote. I need more time. 5 in the afternoon, I replied. Not negotiable. You are being unreasonable, she replied quickly. I need transportation. Ride-sharing services exist. I wrote back. 5 in the afternoon. If you do not bring the car, our report is stolen. There was a pause, then another text. What if I cannot make it? Then at 5 minutes after 5, I called the police. I answered. Try me. At 4:57 that afternoon, my phone buzzed. I am in your garage, Jasmine wrote. I went downstairs. The concrete smelled like oil and exhaust, and the air was heavy with summer heat. The Honda was parked crookedly near my assigned space. Jasmine sat in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. When she saw me, she got out, slammed the door, and threw the keys toward me. They hit the ground and skidded under the bumper. You are cruel, she said. Keys on the ring, I said. Leave. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, as if waiting for me to soften. Can we please talk? Jasmine asked. Really talk? You were just going to throw away 2 years. I bent down, picked up the keys, and looked at her. You threw it away when you gave me an ultimatum, I said. I'm just living with the decision you made. It was not an ultimatum, she said quickly. I just needed you to step up or get out. Those were your exact words, I said. I chose to get out. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they felt different. There was less anger and more rawness. I miss you, she said quietly. I miss us. We can work this out. We can figure out the weekends. Maybe not every weekend, just some. I shook my head. I will not agree to be free childcare for your sister's lifestyle choices, I said. I will not spend my weekends recovering from my job by chasing children who tear up my home while their mother and her boyfriend go dancing. Jasmine wiped at her cheeks. She needs help, she said. Then she can ask her boyfriend, or your parents, or hire a babysitter, I said. I am not part of that equation anymore. Ex-boyfriend, Jasmine said softly, almost to herself. Exactly, I replied. Because you made a choice. Now you have to live with it. I got into the car, started the engine, and looked in the rearview mirror. Jasmine was standing there, small and shaking, tears running down her face. I drove away. I waited for the punch of heartbreak, the sharp ache in the chest that I had always imagined you felt when you watched someone you once loved cry in a parking garage. Instead, what I felt was nothing. A flat, quiet space where feelings used to swell. That was the moment I knew that whatever we had was truly over. Over the next several days, the harassment continued in waves that grew smaller each time. Angela called my cell phone twice more, each time more hostile than the last. She said things like, I will talk to your boss about your character, and people at your job should know how you treat women. I listened the first time, then said calmly, if you contact my workplace, I will file a harassment report and include your calls, your husband's calls, and your daughter's attempt to use my property without permission. She hung up. The second time she called, I let it go straight to voicemail and then deleted it. LaToya was not done trying either. On Saturday morning, I went to my usual coffee shop in downtown Dallas, a place with big windows and a row of worn wooden tables where I often sat with a book. I had just sat down with a mug and a breakfast sandwich when I saw LaToya walking in. My stomach tightened. I looked for an exit, but she had already spotted me. She walked straight over and sat down across from me without asking. The barista, Marvin, glanced over, sensing tension but staying behind the counter. We need to talk, LaToya said, folding her hands on the table as though this were a business meeting. We do not, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. You ruined my sister's life, she said. She is depressed. She is barely eating. This is your fault. I set the mug down and met her eyes. Your sister's life is her responsibility, I said. I am not part of it anymore. LaToya leaned forward. She was happy with you, she insisted. You could fix this if you would just apologize and say you made a mistake. Apologize for what? I asked. For having boundaries? For refusing to be volunteered for a major ongoing commitment I never agreed to. I looked at her properly then, really taking her in. Her hair was messy, pulled back with a stretched-out tie. The bags under her eyes were even darker. There was a faint smear of something on her shirt, maybe food, maybe marker. Where are your children right now? I asked. LaToya blinked, thrown by the change in direction. Reggie is watching them, she said. What? I let the silence stretch for a beat. So he can watch them on Saturday mornings, I said calmly. Interesting. You told me he should not have to watch them because he is not their father. But now he is watching them while you come here to confront your sister's ex-boyfriend. Latoya's jaw tightened. That is different, she said. How is it different? I asked. Because we live together, she said. And we did not live with you, I replied. But you still decided that my weekends, my home, and my energy were yours to assign. You did not ask. You told. That was the problem. Latoya shook her head. You are twisting things, she said. I am pointing out the obvious, I said. You wanted free childcare. I said no. That is the whole story. You can dress it up in whatever language you want, but that is the truth. For a moment, I thought she would argue again. Instead, she pushed her chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. My sister loved you, she said. And you walked away. I nodded once. Your sister loved the idea of a boyfriend who would babysit every weekend, I said. When I did not perform that role, she issued an ultimatum. That is not love. That is convenience. Latoya stared at me, mouth trembling, then turned and walked out without another word. The next major development came from an unexpected direction. Jasmine's younger brother, Trey. I had met him a few times at family gatherings, a quiet guy in his early 20s who mostly kept to himself in corners of the living room, listening to music through one earbud. A few days after the coffee shop encounter, I opened my email at work and saw a message from a familiar last name. The subject line was just, "Hey." "Hey, Malcolm," the email began. "I hope it is okay that I am reaching out. I got your email from Jasmine's phone once when we were doing something with her business. I just want to say I am sorry for how my family has been acting." Jasmine told me the whole story. The real one, not the version she gave mom and dad first. The ultimatum thing was wrong, and volunteering you for babysitting every weekend was wrong. Latoya does this to everyone. She is entitled and expects everybody to rearrange their lives for her. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're the villain. You dodged a bullet. Good luck. It ended with his name. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling something in my chest loosen. It was a small thing, an email, but it mattered. I typed back, "Thanks for reaching out. I appreciate you saying that. I hope you are doing well." He replied a few hours later with a simple, "I am. Take care." That was it. But knowing at least one person inside that family saw what had really happened made me feel less like I had imagined all of it. Life settled after that. The calls stopped. The surprise visits stopped. I went to work, came home to a quiet condo, cooked dinner for one, and rediscovered what silence actually sounded like. I realized how much tension I had been holding in my shoulders, waiting for the next crisis to walk through my door. The first weekend that passed without anything from Jasmine's family felt almost eerie. No frantic texts, no last-minute demands, no little fists pounding on my walls. Just me, a book, and a television that stayed intact. About 3 weeks after the breakup, I was at the grocery store on a Tuesday evening, walking through the produce aisle and trying to decide between two brands of salad mix. I heard a familiar laugh behind me and turned without thinking. Jasmine was pushing a cart toward me. Her hair was done, makeup neat, clothes styled in that particular way she had always favored. Beside her walked a man I did not recognize, talking about something on a list he held. For a split second, Jasmine's eyes met mine. Her face changed, and she looked away quickly, pretending to study a display of apples. The man did not notice me at all. I moved my cart aside, let them pass, and watched them for a moment as they continued down the aisle. Jasmine's posture was a little stiff, but she laughed at something the man said and touched his arm lightly. I realized, standing there between stacked crates of oranges and lemons, that she was already moving on, or at least trying to. And in that exact moment, I understood that I had moved on too. There was no ache, no desperate wish to rewind time, just a quiet acknowledgement that whatever we had shared now belonged to the past. Back at home, my life began to fill up with things I had meant to do for months. I fixed the screen door that had been hanging crooked since last fall. I painted the spare room a soft gray and moved my desk in there, turning it into an office instead of a storage area for boxes and unused furniture. I organized my closets, donated clothes I did not wear, and hung up art that had been leaning against walls and frames because I had never gotten around to hammering in nails. My weekends were suddenly open in a way they had not been since Latoya moved back to town. I slept in on Saturdays instead of waking up to the sound of children screaming in my living room. I grabbed lunch with friends I had not seen in months and realized how many times I'd canceled plans because Jasmine's family had needed us. I started going to the gym in my building again, running on the treadmill, while listening to music instead of standing in my kitchen scrubbing marker off walls. The financial shift was undeniable. One evening, I sat down with my budget and went line by line. For 8 months, I had been covering Jasmine's share of the rent, her car insurance at $140 a month, her phone at $65, plus extra groceries, streaming service subscriptions, and incidental expenses that had piled up. Doing quick math, I realized I had been spending around $800 a month just supporting her lifestyle. That was money I would never see back. Now, suddenly, it was staying in my account. The Honda situation resolved better than I expected. A week after I got the car back, I had it cleaned, fixed a small issue with the brakes, and listed it for sale. Within a few days, a college student from a nearby university came to look at it. He checked the engine, took it for a test drive, and handed me $4,200 in cashier's checks, more than I had offered it to Jasmine for by $700. I used part of that money to cover the cost of the cracked television and tucked the rest into savings. The irony was not lost on me. Every now and then, a random number would text. One afternoon, I got a message that said, "Hope you're happy. My sister is moving on. She found someone better." It was clearly from Latoya, even though the number was new. I stared at the words for a moment, then typed, "Good for her. I am happy too." I sent it and put my phone down. I meant it, not in a bitter way, but in a genuine, detached way. I wanted Jasmine to find someone whose idea of partnership matched hers, someone who would sign up for the role she was trying to cast me in, if that was what he wanted. I just knew I was not that person. With distance, the whole situation became clearer in my mind. The ultimatum she had given me played back in quieter hours, but instead of haunting me, it looked like an exposed truth. It showed exactly who she was in that moment and what she valued. She valued her sister's convenience over the health of our relationship. She valued the ability to volunteer my time, my home, and my energy without asking. She valued the image of having a helpful boyfriend more than the reality of having a partner whose boundaries mattered. When I said no to being free weekend childcare, the mask slipped. Latoya's behavior was not a surprise anymore. Her expectation that everyone around her would bend to accommodate her lifestyle had been there from the beginning. What struck me more was how the rest of the family closed ranks around her. Angela backing her up at my door, repeating that I was making a mistake. Leon calling my job to scold me like I was a teenager who had missed curfew. They all acted as though they were entitled to my time, my space, and my money. When I finally asserted a firm boundary, they cast me as the villain. In their story, I was the selfish man who refused to help family. But in my story, I was the man who finally recognized that he was being treated like a resource instead of a partner. I was the man who looked at an ultimatum and chose to walk away rather than fold himself into a shape that would make other people comfortable while breaking his own back. Sometimes I think about how things might have gone differently if Jasmine had approached me in another way. If, instead of announcing that I would be babysitting every weekend, she had sat down and said, "My sister is struggling. Could you help sometimes?" If she had treated my time as something to request rather than something to assign, maybe I would have said yes once in a while. I care about children in general, and I did not hate Latoya's kids. They were exhausting, but they did not ask to be raised without boundaries. But that is not what happened. What happened was a demand, followed by pressure, followed by an ultimatum. What happened was her walking into my living room and deciding that my weekends were now an extension of her sister's social calendar. What happened was her dismissing my work schedule, my need for rest, and my very clear discomfort with how her nephews and niece behaved in my home. The way she responded to my no told me everything I needed to know about our future if I stayed. Now, when I come home on Friday evenings, I turn the key in my own door knowing that the only chaos waiting inside is whatever mess I left myself. The couch is where I left it. The walls are free of new crayon art. The television is still in one piece. I cook dinner, sometimes something simple like pasta, sometimes something more complicated I find in a cookbook, and I eat it in peace. If I hear children yelling, it is through the walls from another unit, distant and not my responsibility. I do not know what Jasmine tells people now when they ask about me. I imagine there is a version of the story where I am cold and unhelpful, where I abandoned her at her worst, where I refused to be there for her family. That is her right. People make the stories they need in order to live with their choices. I have my own version, and it is the one I live in. In mine, I am the man who finally looked at his life and realized that peace matters more than appearances. There are moments when a memory catches me off guard. A song she used to play while she cooked. The smell of a candle she liked when I pass in the store. An outfit in a boutique window that I can imagine her trying on. I acknowledge the memory, let it rise and fall like a wave, and then I keep walking. Those moments do not hurt, exactly. They are just reminders that I shared part of my life with someone, and that part is over. The story of what happened, when I tell it now to friends over dinner or drinks, always comes back to one sentence. She told me to step up or get out, so I got out. That is the simplest truth. Underneath it sits all the context of unpaid labor, blurred boundaries, and entitlement masquerading as family loyalty. Underneath it sits the quieter truth that I had been ignoring red flags for months, hoping things would change on their own. I am not perfect. I know that. I can be stubborn. I like routine. I hold on to plans tightly and sometimes struggle to adapt when they change suddenly. But I also know what I am worth. I know that my time, my home, and my energy are not infinite resources for other people to consume. I know that love does not mean serving yourself up on a platter every weekend so someone else can go dancing while you scrub marker off your walls. In the end, the ultimatum Jasmine gave me turned out to be a gift I did not know I needed. It forced everything into the open. It made me see exactly how misaligned we were. It gave me permission to walk away without the ghost of what if following behind me. When someone tells you, plainly, that you must abandon your own boundaries to stay with them, there is clarity in that. You can say yes and lose yourself, or say no and lose them. I chose myself. I chose my quiet condo, my repaired screen door, my freshly painted office, my long Saturdays with no knocks at the door. I chose to stop being an unpaid solution to someone else's reckless decisions. I chose to believe that I deserved a partner who would ask, not demand, and who would listen when I said, "This is too much." That choice has given me something I have forgotten I valued so highly: peace. These days, when I sit on my couch on Sunday evenings, watching the sun drop behind the buildings and the sky turn from pink to deep blue, I think about how close I came to living a life where every weekend belonged to someone else. A life where my home was not truly mine, where my time was pre-assigned, where saying no made me the enemy. I am grateful I did not step into that future. I lock my door, turn off the lights, and go to bed knowing that my choices got me here. That is enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.